Hello.
Hello, I see. Yes,
Yeah. Hi.
Deep
I am Deep
Jyoti.
Jyoti. Yeah, I'm Deep Jyoti. Hi. So I would just like to take up from what the previous participants had said. I mean, when I read Derrida writing that
Mhm.
poem is like an animal on the autoroute rolled up in a ball, of course, it makes me think of a vulnerable subject, but a kind of a vulnerable subject which invites our attention, but not attention of any kind, invites a feminist or a queer ethical attention of tender, of kindness, and of compassion. And then when I read the quotation, I am a dictation pronounces poetry. Learn me by heart, copy me down, guard me and keep me. Look out for me, look at me, dictated dictation right before your eyes. So when I read this, first of all, it makes me think of a small child who is inviting us, inviting our attention, and for some reason or the other, it also makes me think of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein's
Yeah,
creature, the
yeah,
monster. And yeah, and I mean, when Derrida is saying that poetry is dictation, it also takes us back to the age-old function of poetry, the didactic function of poetry, and it
yeah.
also reminds me of a regional poet. I'm from Assam, so we
Yes.
have a poet called Nilomani Fukonn, who had who was also awarded with the highest literary prize of the country, Gyanpith Award. So who said that poetry is the dictation of humanity? To say it in Assamese, "Kobita manobotar konthaswar manobotar srutolipi." Right. And also when Derrida says that look out for me and look at me. So
Yeah.
when we think about poetry and when we think about text, it is the meaning making of a text. It is a process. So you cannot just look at it and go away. You have to keep looking out for it because time, circumstance, based on time and based on circumstance, based on also the age of the text, the meanings will change. And also the last part of that quote, right before your eyes, that
Mhm.
also makes me curious, because when Derrida is saying right before your eyes, I think he is also questioning the nature of the poem and the nature of the text altogether. Like, what is a poem if it is just right before my eyes? Again, I mean, I'm thinking this in a very regional context. Our poet Nilomani Fukan had said that every poem is a humane moment. Protito
Yeah.
kobita ek মানবিক মুহূর্ত. So can we also think about poetry and poem and text in that manner?
Thank you for your rich. Can I have the name of the poet in the chat, please? I would like to
Yeah,
learn
sure.
this. I think I want this to be a learning experience for me. Um, so vulnerable, feminist, queer, tenderness, compassion. You are a woman in the first part of your rich response. You've woven a thread, a web of references. In other words, Derrida is hinting at a different kind of textuality. There is no doubt about that. But you are trying to specify what kind of textuality. Rather, you're trying to call our attention to the fact that after Derrida, his insight about the vulnerable text has been taken up by others. So feminist take on reading, queer take on reading, indeed value empathy. Okay, so there are more empathetic ways of relating to others, looking at others. The stake of reading for feminist criticism and queer criticism is to notice what has not been noticed, is to give voice to, as Gloria Ansaldúa like to refer to her, to give voice not only to those who have not had voice, but to give voice to unforeseen, unpredictable, subjects and subjectivities. So, but to do that, it's not just, a brutal ideological decision. Okay, I give voice, instituting a voice. It's about a different form of attention, a different form of reading, as you said. And so vulnerable subjects, the vulnerable subjects evoked through the image of the text animal, the poem animal, indeed as paving the way for a different turn in criticism. I found that very perceptive in the first part of your comment. Tenderness, kindness, compassion. It has to do with the way of imagining or reimagining a new educating ourselves to a new gaze on others. What can reading and literature do in this process of re-education, which is a planetary enterprise? It's not just a local one. Now, I find also very intriguing your reference to Mary Shelley, and very appropriate because the text as Derrida embark, imagine, dream it, to do justice to them. It's, for example, Barth makes, at a certain point, will make no difference between the critic and the reader, or between love and reading. There is this crossing boundaries, but also erasing boundaries. So the text has a jumble of pieces, has a patchwork of pieces, exactly like the creature engineered by Victor Frankenstein. I find that a very productive venue for further reflection. The body of the text, textual bodies. The didactic, I was also struck by you detecting a didactic tone in Derrida. Have you noticed how that tone, the didactic tone, is part of HD's poem 4 at a certain point? She starts with "there is," the tone of the observer, and then she moves, slides into the be indigestible. She issues a series of pieces of advice, commands to the reader. Uh, Something that strikes me is, yes, process. Thinking about the text as process, not as object. And that lines up with what we said before, the other group said, when I invoked Waichi Demo. A text, as it circulates, as it travels, it changes, it accrues, it loses and it gains, because the text is ultimately a communal something made. I don't want to say object, communal something made. Now, the last part of your comment I found challenging because you asked a question. Could you rephrase that question for us? For me in particular. Before the eyes. The poetry.
Reader is saying, that poem is right in front of your eyes, right?
Yeah.
So I am trying to kind of question the textuality of the text itself. I mean, when you say that the poem is right in front of your eyes, can we think about poem as something which is not the material text? Can we think of poem as the other of the material texts? Poetry, as yeah.
Yeah, got it, absolutely. What is the pearl of great price if not what you're trying to say, what we are trying to say? Because I was trying to say that too. There is something uncountable. There's something uncountable in the text. We usually associate this element to poetry because we think poetry uses primarily a metaphorical language. Poetry is different from ordinary discourse. It has that mysterious aura. But latching on to Derrida, we could extend this to the text. I do think that when he talks about dictated dictation, is talking about that secret pearl of great price, that uncountable element in the text that cannot be governed, regulated, fully decoded, totalized, etc., etc., etc.
It again takes me back to the Frankenstein's monster. I mean, like the monster could not be contained by the material text. Towards the end of the text, we see the monster kind of leaping out of the text. So I
Yeah,
also think that happens when we are doing poetry or literature in general. You know, something like you said, uncountable,
yeah,
something which
yeah.
just slips out, and
Oh, yeah,
that is what, yeah.
yeah. I think that's so important because, we are enamored, of course, all of us are enamored of materiality and the material turn, and that's important. Remember what Benjamin said, however. Benjamin was, I don't want to be reductive, but he was keen on a Marxist view of the world, but yet he underscored that truth that is not quantifiable, that is pure aliveness, expressiveness. So the text escapes us indeed. That's why Roland Barthes talked about a lover's discourse. He ended up talking about the text in terms of a lover's discourse. I think this line of inquiry should be pursued. That is, I don't know whether we can call it immaterial, spiritual, but whatever. The text remains a reflection, a mirror, or a well of the human. Insofar as it is homo faber that makes the text, clearly we can talk about artificial intelligence, technology, creating text, but I think we are fond, at least I'm fond of thinking about the text because of the kind of questions it poses about uh, those uncountable aspects of the human. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
your comments. Thank you. And let's see, I'm looking at the chat to see. Oh, thank you
Hello,
for the
ma'am.
name of the poet. Thank you. Thank you. More groups.
Hello, ma'am. Here, me again, Priyanshu.
Yes, I don't. Oh, yes, Priyanshu. Priyanshu,
Yes.
yes, I see you.
Yeah. Okay. So, ma'am, what I found about Derrida. So, like Derrida's insight into the text or into the instability of language in itself revolutionized the literary criticism. Like we can say that, like it is shifting the focus from the finding text true meaning to embracing its complexity and more interpretive openness. So then what happens, like text in itself becomes more living and
Yeah,
evolving for perpetual engagement.
yeah,
And what we see then, meaning is always like it's deferred and it's never finalized. So like I can take an example of the novel of Virginia Woolf. So like let's take the example of Virginia Woolf's Night and Day. So
yes,
so let's consider the portrayal of love and marriage in the novel. So like one reader may interpret Catherine's journey as a critique of traditional marriage norms, whereas other may see it as nuanced acceptance of companionship. So like both readings are valid, and as the text itself never as text itself never fully resolves these themes, but what we see, it's constantly gestures towards multiple readings.
yeah, yeah. Totally, Priyanshu. Thank you for following up on the earlier conversation. Dynamic is, we're back to the term you used in in your earlier contribution. Yeah, the defense of the dynamic quality of the text, its liveliness, the fact that it's not something to control. So the gesture is not the controlling gesture, the gesture of the critic, of the reader, or the reader who wants to become a critic, but embracing its complexity. And the complexity is due to the fact that there is an entry for each reader, for different readers. So you rightly invoked Virginia Woolf, Night and Day. Speaking of Woolf, we could also invoke The Waves, a later text of the 30s, where the text itself, that novel itself, in describing lives is completely in flux, completely undecidable. But
Yes, exactly, ma'am. So like we can say that like some may read this novel as a feminist critique, some may read it as a social commentary, or some may read it as a
yes, yes,
philosophical exploration of identity. So
yes,
like each reading uncovers new dimensions. Every time we read, we gain a perspective.
absolutely. And that plurality, Priyanshu, I think is positive, not negative. I don't see that plurality as a danger. I see it as an opportunity. In other words, those who have criticized critique, the scholars who at the moment want to return to objectivity out of fear of this slide into after relativism of nihilism, I think what is forgotten in the process is the uniqueness of literature and unique because the uniqueness relies in the relation it creates with readers, its inclusivity. I see literature in this sense as language. You know how language has been conceptualized in the earlier 20th century as an institution that is different from all other institutions because it is at the same time individual and collective. It allows for the individual and the collect. The minute I say I put on myself, I take on the entire system, and as an individual, I participate. So I see literature as that, and I see eh, that opportunity and that possibility as a wealth, not as a threat. So multiplicity as an asset. That multiplicity as an asset because it means that the focus is less on what the object contains and more on how the object reaches people, what kind of people it reaches, in what kind of places it is read. Thank you. I see a hand raised. Faridi Verma? Faridi?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I was thinking about the idea of deconstruction per se, and how then not only the text is having multiple variations of interpretation, but also how the words then start to disintegrate in almost a fashion which we can trace back to Heidegger, in a sense that when the whole idea of guard me, recite me by heart, is the sense that we keep holding on to these words, otherwise all the things stop making sense. So I was
Oh, yeah.
thinking all along those lines, and how then it becomes it deconstructs into nothingness, absolute nothingness.
Oh,
uh,
that's if I may, Paridi, that's a really provocative and lovely commentary. It's the comment of a reader. I mean, we are all reading Derrida, but you bumped against, when you bump against something, you're reading. Yes, dictated dictation. Uh, that that's something learned by heart. It's as if he were talking about some words you need to hold on to, otherwise nothing else makes sense. And that reminds me of the comment of one of your colleagues who rightly remarked on Derrida, having said that he is not a very well read, uh, thinker, but what he has read thoroughly. We attach ourselves to some texts, not just because of what they contain, of the words, literally the content, but because of that dictated dictation, that factor that Dipjoti was also hinting at earlier on. There is something that we feel we need to hold on to that is very private. It's a secret, but that privacy, that secret is the beginning of our very capacity to think, to insert ourselves in a traditional thought without feeling that we can't think. Tell me if this makes sense.
Yes, ma'am, it absolutely does. Ma'am, I was also thinking about the fact that how the idea of hedgehog then almost adds humanity to the whole text or the poetry per se, if we were to say poetry. That it of course goes to nothingness, but the very idea of self-preservation is very human about the text itself.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yes, preservation. I'm struck by your use of this word, simply because in the lectures we've been talking about the deconstructive axis, you know, and then the care, okay, and with those two writers, HD and Rich, and preservation is something to preserve. That dictated dictation indeed as something to be preserved, to be guarded not in the sense of, you know, standing guard to, but a kind of legacy to be guarded. Very inspiring comments. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other group?
Ma'am, we can move to the questions in the chat.
Yes. Okay, great. Then let me resume from the poem protects itself with its rugged surface of meaning, hence there is no finality to it, just like an animal's movement does. This is a very interesting Hindu Kumari, very interesting comment. A poem protects itself with its rugged surface of meaning. Indeed, the form, the care, the crafting of form as in itself a protection, a shield. And there is no finality to it. And that protection, that shield, the shield of form, to protect the sheer desire to create something, the sheer desire, the sheer aesthetic desire, which we should not take for granted in societies that where there is a function, there must be a function, a use to everything. The sheer aesthetic desire that has no purpose, that is, it's like a rose that has no reason to bloom. I think this comment is suggesting the idea of form as a protection of the sheer aesthetic, creative desire has no finality, just like an animal's movement does. And so the animal metaphor here, according to this interpretation, would help Derrida foreground the aimlessness, the good aimlessness of a text, and the capacity of a text to detach itself from the ideologies, from being a servant of a society in its ideologies. Society's ideologies. Let me move down. There is Anushri, Derrida's use of the phrase "look out for me" can hint at the relation between the text and the reader. And the vulnerability it takes to connect honestly with a text. A vulnerability not many can handle. I like to pause here for a moment because this is so true. So true that yes, reading is the central practice in our field, and reading raises all sorts of questions because it's in a way uncomfortable to talk about those certain reading moments that trigger then interpretations that we can defend in public. There are private reading moments that are about an intimacy between the reader and the text, and they are vulnerable moments. They are difficult to share, and yet this is why reading literature is so foundational. Because as I was trying to say earlier on, having this intimate moments, having these hedgehog moments, these moments of intimacy with the text individually, is the beginning of our symbolic birth. It's how we stand. It's the right to be thinkers, the right to be speakers. As you know, we are born twice. When we are born physically, okay, biologically, and then symbolic birth, when we feel the warming inclusion in a community, in a society. Reading as an important infrastructural reading literature, that is this reflection in text, the mysterious way with which some texts call us, as an important infrastructural role in our symbolic births. We are given an identity when we are born, even by the sheer fact that people talk to us, and as infants, babies, we learn to think of ourselves through the words of others, through the images of ourselves that come from others. But as beings of language and of thought, we have the possibility of correcting, rejecting, turning away from those images that do not reflect our growing self. And in order to do that, we need to feel we are entitled to think, and we are entitled to speak. We are able to speak, not because we pronounce words, but because we are in a common space. We have language, an intimate relation. So reading, the moments you're hinting at, Anushri, are those moments of intimacy that are the foundation of our symbolic birth. Tell me if some of this makes sense to you.
It does make sense, ma'am.
Let me move to the second part of your comment. However, the dictation, and again, we are intrigued by this word dictation, because dictation is dictated dictation. When Derrida uses that expression, he refers, as we were saying before, to something that we know intimately, or we like to know, we like to have with us always. However, the dictation right before my eyes will have an impact on me, which sooner or later will prompt me to interact with it and the pearls of a psychological turmoil. Because the text is always something other. So there are those intimate moments. I mean, the relation to the text is a blueprint for the relation to the other, if you like. So it's this outward and inward pull, just as HD describes. It's this bridge cast across the other, and sometimes this intimacy, but it's also the idea that the text is impenetrable, is unstable. Its meaning is unstable. So hence the turmoil. Textuality is a property of human life. Yeah, I like the way you're combining bits and pieces of knowledge to create new knowledge. Yes, textuality is a property of human lives. At a certain point in the development of the meaning of text, the word text became charismatic for people, especially throughout post-structuralism, because as we saw, it became a symbol of a new turn, of a new sensibility. We saw that with Barthes and Derrida. But textuality as a property of human lives, you're saying that the example of reading, which we have commented, is actually can work as an example of human life, that is the way we interact with each other in the social order, if I understand you correctly. All right, so Ramya, my attention is drawn to the use of the term self-defense in the prompt. I think it is interesting how Derrida draws attention to how the text is elusive as a form of self-defense. Absolutely. the text escapes. We commented on this extensively with Mohit, with Paridi, with Priyanshu earlier on, and also with Dipjoti when we talked about that immaterial, that uncountable element. The text is elusive. In fact, maybe we invented this word, we care for this word, we are attached to this word just because it allows us, it's one of the words that allows us to signify this elusiveness. I think it is interesting how Derrida draws attention to how the text is elusive as a form of self-defense. Yes, because it means the text is not an object, but it is the symbol of self-other interaction. The minute we interact with the text, that's also a metaphor for how we interact with another, and how other and self are mutually elusive also. It may perhaps be possible to lend it a psychological reading and thereby offering the text itself some sense of humanity, and thereby leading to its deserved humane engagements and dealing. Yes, I think if I'm understanding you correctly, I think you are basically saying what I was trying to say just a second ago, that Derrida is injecting in this description of, in this strange description of the text as poem animal, is trying to say that the text is a mirror of human engagement, and that engagement also, self-other engagement, has to do with this mutual elusiveness, this self-enclosure. These are monads, people like, text reader are monads, but in relation. They remain like the hedgehog in danger remains, or like the hermit or the mollusk. They remain self-enclosed while also in relation. We have been talking about the great potential of reading, thinking about reading as an activity and the great potential of that. The concept of a symbolic birth and the part literature can play in identity formation, especially for the vulnerable of the human population, is something eye-opening and worth to think about. Yes, thank you for this comment. And that, Anushri, actually that has to do with my research in progress. I'm working with two Italian theorists. One from the past, she died in 2007, and I will introduce her to you, Angela Putino, feminist thinker, and a contemporary thinker, mainly a psychoanalyst, called Manuela Freire. I'm going to put the name in the chat. Manuela. Sorry, Freire. Manuela Freire calls attention in her work to exactly a common narrative of identity formation. She, the child, and how the child receives an image as that he or she carries on with him or her as an adult. Basically, to go to the point and to cut the story short, Freire studies identity formation and finds that the infants receives his or her identity, but not just from one person, from the mother or whoever first speaks to the infants, but from a whole, and must develop the capacity to react to that to that I that is received. The I is received. And our capacity to react to that, calling it gift, I don't know how appropriate it is, but it's something received but not necessarily accepted. But our capacity to react to that gift constitutes our symbolic birth. It is what makes us beings of language and beings of thought. So it does. I agree with you. I mean, it deserves further thought. Reminds me. Let me read. Reminds me of Professor Cyrus. Someone wrote, "A true understanding may lie not within the lines, but in." Reminds me of Professor Cyrus and the movie Aligarth. He also says that the meaning of poetry lies in the spaces and the silences between the words. In fact, I think that's why Derrida chooses a poetry or the poem as a metaphor for the text as a whole, because of that uncountable unsaid. Let me proceed with order before I got to Friday. All right, humane engagement. The concept of symbolic birth. So I agree with you, Anushri, that it deserves further reflection. Looking at it in the Indian context, especially with its sociocultural context, where literacy was long denied to many, yes, texts have played a dual role of emphasizing on as well as countering the denial of equality as a stakeholder in one's country. Yes. And this is, if I may, this is a topic close to my heart and interest, because what you say of India is also true of other places, Italy among them. Education and thus that kind of fluent access to fluent psychological access to text, to reading, to literature, to symbolic making has been denied not only to women but to the working classes for a long time. And today we need to struggle to turn institutions of education into more inclusive places still today. So I'm glad you bring this up. May we say that it has made people both vulnerable and empowered? Well, yes, that's I would say, yes, both vulnerable and empowered. That's what Derrida is saying of the text, actually. True understanding may lie in the spaces between. Yes, yes. We're back to the Pearl of Great Price, which is not just the crafting of what is before our eyes, but of an uncountable element within the Pearl of Great Price. I can read the tension between exposure and withdrawal in the animal image given by. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. You have noticed. I'm glad you have noticed that by 1988, Derrida's perspective on the text is closer to HD's modernist perspective and Adrienne Rich's feminist perspective. I may suggest how poetry vis-a-vis literature reveals itself while retreating full comprehension. This is would be a very complex discourse. Let me try and share very in an anarchic way some threads of this discourse. Yes, spectacularization. And in the society of the spectacle, to what extent does literature interpretation become part of the spectacle? So withdrawal is a good thing. There is an Italian philosopher, Pier Aldo Rovatti, who has studied this phenomenon, how to resist ongoing spectacularization that enhances visibility for its own sake, visibility in the eyes of another. So I think this is a very shrewd perceptive comment. At the time Derrida wrote "Che cos'è la poesia?", to what extent was he being sensitive to responding to a particular climate whereby withdrawal itself becomes resistance, dissent. Still, it invites engagement and multiple absolutely. It reveals as well as conceals. Yes, we spoke of those moments of withdrawal that constitutes the tete-a-tete, the intimate colloquy of reader and text. Those are moments of withdrawal. It's fascinating to consider how certain authors, certain thinkers withdraw with certain readings. They return again and again to certain readings. They withdraw with them in order to hatch, give birth to a new thought. This was the case of Angela Putino with Simone Weil, the modernist philosopher Simone Weil. Angela Putino, whom you will encounter in the last day, withdrew with Simone Weil, thinker she felt a special affinity with, in order to produce, although produce is not a good word, in order to give birth to her, Putino's own thought. So withdraw is about an intimacy, a productive intimacy that tries to stay away from spectacularization. It's ultimately about those places of thought that are unsurveilled, not surveilled, where you speak, not conscious that another is looking at you and therefore surveilling you. It's those places outside of what Foucault called governmentalization. Thank you, Anushri. I hope this freewheeling, free-flowing modality helps you. I believe in it because as you take notes, I'm not assuming that these things will be helpful right now, but they might be helpful in the future. So, Rashni, what do you say? Shall we move to one more prompt? Do we have time for that? Oh, there we go. There is another comment in the.
Ma'am. Amina, we can take up the other excerpt if you have something.
Yes, absolutely. I like to respond to one more. I think contribution in the chat. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah? Perfect.
Yeah. Derrida might have read the British philosopher Isaiah Berlin's 1953 essay, "The Hedgehog and the Fox." That's a very nice. By the way, H.D. wrote something called The Hedgehog. I don't remember whether it's a short story, but it's called The Hedgehog, or it's a fairy tale, but it's called The Hedgehog. The Hedgehog and the Fox, written some 30 years before Derrida wrote this essay. In this essay, Berlin divides great writers as possessing either a hedgehog-like or a fox-like quality. Of course, withdrawal and aggression. Hedgehogs are those writers who are driven by a single idea. Plato, Proust, and writers guided by many governing sensibilities, not a single idea, Goethe, the world thinker. Thus, Derrida's hedgehog might also be seen as an animal who displays his thorns in order not to be pinned by many governing ideas, but keeping the poem safe, resisting language as a form of dissection and as a form of control, because language, through its function of grammaticalization, what I call grammaticalization, like giving shape to things, can be a very violent thing. But this is a great comment as well. Yes, thank you for sharing your insights. And thank you for sharing your connection. I think it's great. Yes. shall we uh, shall we move to one more prompt? Now I'm at a loss because I had prepared for you, and of course nothing is lost because the way I created this prompt is also thinking about you and you using them to review the materials. But if I were to choose one, press time. If I were to choose one, I would choose a prompt on HD, perhaps, so that we can further analyze um, the poem Mollusk. Maybe either prompt one, or I'm going to share the screen in a second, or prompt two as well. I think prompt two might be productive for us together with prompt four. So prompt two and four. Let me share the screen and tell you what I intend to do, what I would like to do with you. So let me position my, okay, right, this we don't want, this we want, this one. All right, let's share. Yeah. So basically, you should be seeing the word doc again. I think, this is a prompt relating to poem 4 by HD. And I suggest that prompt 2 might be productive for us. Prompt 2 asks you to focus on the speaker of poem 4, and the speaker begins with there is, that is with as an observer, a knowing observer, and continues with a pedagogical tone, a tone, I'm sorry, the typo, a tone of instruction, be indigestible, hard, ungiving. And of course, ungiving phonically contains living, ungiving, as if we had the movement of the mind debating and correcting itself. What I wish us to discuss is whether we can talk about this poem as a scene of the poet thinking. So, in other words, I'm looking for not proofs, but I'm looking for moments when this poem text tells us that it is offering its own theory of the text. A poet is thinking and is thinking about her craft. Can we possibly discuss to what extent poem 4 is a scene of reflection, and then either this or the syntax. I think the syntax is one of the fascinating items in poem 4. Notice the complex syntax. It's full of semicolons. What do we make of that? The two prompts are related because the semicolons, of course, as a punctuation mark, the semicolon forces you to stop. It's a pause. It's not a drastic pause like a full stop, a period, but it does force you to stop, and maybe think, reflect. So can we combine the two prompts? And Rashni, I appeal to your judgment here. Can we possibly combine the two prompts? Take 10 minutes in groups and then reconvene. Can we do that, Rashni? Because the interactive part is
actually, it was the first day, so we couldn't group the participants. Maybe tonight I'll put, after the session is over, I'll request the participants to create groups so we can have, or we can group them up, and that will help us in the upcoming sessions.
Yes,
so
that would be great.
As of now, the way we did the last excerpt, the same way we will request the participants to like raise their hand, and maybe in if they could pair up with someone, it's good enough, or otherwise they can put up the individual queries.
Yeah, as you wish. But we have, if I'm not mistaken, we have 15, more than 15 more minutes, and we can perhaps discuss. We have a global discussion about these two prompts to make things easier for everybody. And then tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, in the tutorial, we'll work with groups because I find it very productive.
Yeah. So we'll be creating the groups after this session.
So for now, to make the most of the remaining minutes, I would invite, if participants have the prompts in front of them, I think it might be nice. It might be nice to discuss your responses to prompt 2 and prompt 4 conjoined, or alternatively, if some of you have something to say about the other prompts, because there is a number of prompts, go ahead. I mean, it's free. But I will concentrate to give the thing some order. I would concentrate on prompt 2 and 4 together. What do you think, Rashni?
That's perfect. That's perfect.
So let's begin with imagine what kind of scene. Can we imagine poem 4 as a scene of the poet thinking, the poet reflecting? What are the indications, the sign there is a poet thinking here? I will share the poem, maybe the text of the poem, so that we can we have the text in front of us. I somehow lost you. Sorry. Here we go. Share. Okay, and you should see the poem right now, so that people can refer. Okay, I see a hand up, although I can't see the name because I'm sharing the screen. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, ma'am.
Yes.
Because of some issues, I won't be able to switch on my camera, but I would go ahead with just a response that I find. I Can we talk about, like, where do we find the poet thinking? I feel when we go to the line, I sense my own limit, my shell jaws snap shut at invasion of the limitless. I feel this is where the poet is also kind of thinking its own their own limits, like whatever is coming into their mind, they're putting it down into words. I feel this is one place where the poet is thinking of a certain kind of limit, and also holding together whatever images are coming in the mind while the poet is writing this particular poem. Just a thought, an immediate response to the question that you put across.
Oh, thank you for that. In fact, to support your point, let me try and expand on your point as supported. I, the use of I, the first person pronoun, so someone is a person coming forward. I sense my own limit. I love what you said about, this is the poet. This scene might be about the poet writing whatever crosses our mind. Notice that this is a scene where the I speaks, saying, "I sense my own limit." It's a moment of withdrawal as well, as if this is the poet speaking, the poet were remarking on the necessity to separate from the world, to step back and to take that distance, to be apart. Because sensing one's own limit also means to be conscious of the fact that we are just one in an infinite sea of others and of things. And then the withdrawal, my shell jaws snap shut. Right? And I'm thinking about the tense, the present tense, remarking on an action that maybe it's not the first time that this action is done. It may be habitual, recurring. So the habit of shutting oneself up, shell jaws. I love the fact that there's an I and then my shell jaws. Okay, we were talking about this crossing or rather shuttling back and forth the human and the creaturely, right? The human and the creaturely, the formlessness. So the separation, withdrawal as almost a habit and a necessity, a snapshot at invasion of the limitless. And of course, this snapshot means order, because the limitless is something without an order. Remember what we said about the text with Barth and Derrida, the earlier Derrida. They want the text to embody, to symbolize an open space without restrictions, without others, without impositions, without limits. Here, the I, the human creaturely I, the poet who presents herself, advances toward us under the guise, under this gender defying and species defying guise, speaks of this moment of snapping shut at invasion of the limitless. This very local, very individual crafting. The limitless and then ocean weight. We are in the water dimension. Remember, Rich said the sea is not a question of power. It has been remarked by more than one scholar, in fact, that the water, of course, is a feminine element. But Rich says the most important thing is that water is not a question of power. So the search for another modality, another way of thinking, and therefore another way of combining our thoughts in a text. So yes, thank you very much for your comment. And then there is the question about infinity, no, right? Infinity, limitlessness, no. More comments. What do you think of the syntax? Semicolon, when you have the colon is, preludes to an explication. Colon, explication. There is the modality of the observer, right? But then combined with the modality, the pedagogical tone. Of course, the colon is, okay, let me explain to you. Priyanshu, I saw you wanted, yes, your hand. Your name appeared on the screen. Would you like to take the floor, Priyanshu?
Priyanshu, you can unmute yourself.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Hello. Okay, so I took the prompt too. That basically what I examined, it tells us about what poet is thinking about. It there are the three things which I noticed. It's their observation, there is a use of matter, and there is also self-reflection.
Yes.
Okay, so what it began with, begin with the image of a selfish, crafting its resilient cell. And so here the speaker is trying to tell the themes of creation, limitation, and survival against overwhelming forces.
Yes. Well, creation equals exactly amounts to surviving overwhelming forces. Master Mason, okay, planning the storm marvel, but against overwhelming forces. Absolutely. Um, uh,
Yes, ma'am. So like what I infer from this is the need to develop the inner strength and sufficiency within finite boundaries. That is
yeah.
at most important.
Yeah, absolutely. Priyanshu, you know what the objection to that is? I mean, I was presenting at a conference and saying exactly what you said, and
My
someone
pleasure.
objected. Someone objected that it could be a selfish view. You know, someone who withdraws in her own boundaries, self out of self, that might be a selfish and isolationist selfish view, but I don't think so. I think that what we see at work is precisely what you said. A creativity, creating something, even creating the new, is an activity that involves struggling against overwhelming forces. Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. So what I found there is a tension in poetry between rigidity and adaptability.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Could you
Yeah,
point? That's wonderful. Could you point to a stanza or some words for us? That's wonderful. Rigidity, the tension between rigidity and adaptability. Where do you hear it particularly?
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I'm telling you. Just give me a second. I have to
Yeah, yeah, of
scroll my
course, of
word.
course, of course.
Oh, yes, ma'am. So there it is written like living within you beget
Mm,
out of self and selfless that pearl of great price. So that here
yeah,
it's something that is indicating us of adaptability
yes,
and
yes, yes.
so
If,
and there is a tension. So from where I found tension. So uh, uh, there is a rigidity of a closed shell and the creative adaptability of a pearl making. So
yeah,
so what the poem is trying to instruct that to be firm and yet to be organic. Use of imaginary living within suggests that the resilience also involve dynamic inner growth and transformation.
yeah. Absolutely. Thank you. This
Yes, ma'am.
connects us back to what we were saying earlier on, that the dictated dictation of this poem. This is a poem, okay, but it contains something. It tries to, not a message exactly, but a pearl of great price, like something that concerns us as humans. Adaptability, I love what you said about the tension between rigidity, between form and adaptability, because that way
Yeah.
of looking at the poem,
Yes, ma'am.
means that we can read self out of self, not as referring to selfishness, but precisely to adaptability.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank
And I
you.
can also find one more line. So here
Yeah.
it is written yeah, ma'am. I can also find one more line. So that indicates about rigidity. So the line
Mhm.
goes like jaws snap shut at
Yeah.
invasion of the limitless. So
Yes.
what I thought here there is an image of the cell snapping out symbolizes defensive reaction to the external forces. Like this suggests that protective rigidity against the overwhelming or infinite water.
Indeed, indeed, indeed.
Yes.
Thank you, because you are resonating with what we said in the lecture about the tension between form and formlessness. Both Rich and HD like to walk the fine boundary between form and formlessness, the abyss of form and the abyss of formlessness. And you're noticing that. Thank you, the tension between the two. Thank you. I'm, uh, I'm struck uh, uh, by and by what we are trying to do in the remote mode, and how lively your contribution is, despite the remote modality. Thank you. A couple of more comments, perhaps, about the syntax, or about the scene of reflection. So this is a scene of reflection. We are agreeing where the poet is reflecting on precisely the creation of forms, and how the creation of forms is about withstanding overwhelming forces, indeed formlessness.
Ma'am, there are comments about the syntax in the chat box.
Yes, let me look at the comments. I'm not sure. I have to stop sharing in order to see the chat box. I'm sorry about this. Okay, here we go. All right. Yes, I see the comments. Anushri, the poet brings out a comparison between the infinite bounty of nature and the finite human. Yes. This is a theme, Anushri, you might like to know, a theme, a leitmotif in HD. One of our earlier poems that I love to teach is precisely about the infinite bounty of nature, and how the human must relate to that. Oread, it's called, the poem is called Oread. I'm going to put it in the chat. Speak about mythological figures, Orient. Yeah. Okay. So let me continue with responding to your comment. From the lens of transcendence, a common power, or maybe a superior being, has been the creator of both. Yes, interesting about this. We were speaking about the uncountable, the pearl in the poem, and I think it's undeniable that there is in HD, call it ontological, call it metaphysical streak. What you say from the lens of transcendence, a common power. There is the urge to make a statement about the human condition. Has been the creator of both, but while it made one infinite, one so limited in its own capabilities and on mortality. Yes, a reflection on mortality and our forms may account for that. Prana Bhargya, it provides avenue for the exploration of boundaries, spanning the physical and the metaphysical. Yes, again, the metaphysical comes back, accentuates the dynamic tension that exists between the notions of limitations. Thank you. This resonates with the earlier comments. Priyanshu, I see your hand up. Go ahead before I move on to Anushri. Go ahead, Priyanshu.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Okay. So, ma'am, like I'm talking about syntax, so I can see there is a juxtaposition and parallelism. So, when the poem says about like be firm in your small cell, be firm in your small static limited orbit, and then the poet also says about like living within you beget self out of self. So like there is a structural juxtaposition that reinforces the tension between rigidity and adaptability again. So like I earlier mentioned about rigidity and adaptability. So the point goes in this way. And ma'am, I can also see there is a fragmentation and line breaks. So like in these lines, uh, continuous the sea thrust is powerless against coral. So there is a fragmentation. So like there is a mirror of fluidity of thoughts. Can we say that, ma'am?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm reminding Priyanshu of, remember, fragmentation in Adrienne Rich, the image of the ladder is about the frailty, the thin. Yes, there is both things, the tension between, like a planet a form that flies out and then gathers itself within fragmentation, and then there is fragmentation as well. Now, the thought process seems to flow, but thought also proceeds by virtue of those very tiny stanzas, proceeds through fragments, one might argue. Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. So, like, what I can see, like, there is a use of imperatives as well. So, like, the lines, like, be indigestible, hard, and
Yeah,
ungiving. So,
yeah,
like, here, what I can see, like, the poet is very instructive in role, and
yeah,
he's guiding
indeed.
readers towards the self-sufficiency.
Indeed, the pedagogical tone. Absolutely. You
Yes,
have
ma'am.
identified, underlined the pedagogical tone. There is the
Yes.
observer at the beginning, and then someone who is instructing, who has something to pass on, instructing in that sense. Uh, and it goes back to the notion of resilience that someone has pointed out. Those instructions have to do with resilience, teaching resilience. Can I move to Anushri's comment? Like, it can be seen as a display of a conflict, a dissent between the poet and the creator. This is very interesting because we were speaking of tensions, of fragmentation. The poet and the creator questioning why one has been limited in such ways. This is very interesting. I don't have any helpful remarks to make, except that we should take stock of this comment. It suggests that there are multiple personae staged in that eye. That there is the poet who suffers the limits and who desires to create. Again, form and formlessness, the conflict between the two. And then Pranav, it provides avenue for the exploration of boundaries. The syntax, yes. Syntax, the exploration of boundaries, but also on the part of the reader, because the minute you encounter a semicolon, in fact, the next comment, Anushri addresses that, the minute you encounter a semicolon, you're taken by the hand by HD and the poet persona that she stages in a reflection, in her own reflection. The usage of semicolons can be hinting at an internal conflict. It's a pause in any case. It's a pause, but not a sharp pause, where the superego clashes with the ego, a need to question one's existence and the societal conditioning to accept what one has been ascribed with. Interesting. So here there would be, this is a scene of reflection whereby the poet reflects on her making, but there is also at play a split, says Anushri. She sees a split persona, one whereby the poet reflecting on the making of poetry is trying to resist, counter, refuse social conditionings. And that would explain the withdrawal, the insistence on withdrawal. And that would explain also the dive into a different identity, the creaturely slide as well.
We have come to an end of the allotted time, ma'am. Would you like to end the discussion for now?
Yes, I actually would like to end, but first, let me ask you, is it possible to have the transcription of the chat? Is it possible to save that and have a copy?
And we'll check if it's possible and we'll share it with you.
Yes, because I would treasure that. Because
Otherwise, we'll share the screenshots of the comments with you if you're not able to.
Meena, we have taken the screenshots of the comments. So I'll get it typed and send it to you.
Including the name of the poet. Please don't forget.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
At a later stage, I'll be sharing the recordings also with you.
Thank you so much. Now, let me end by thanking all the participants for this sparkling debate. It's been a fascinating tutorial. Thank you for the opportunity of sharing my ideas with you. And thank you for making me feel at home as if I were in my own classroom. Thank you. Your questions and your comments have been really brilliant and a form of nurturing for my talk. Thank you. I very much look forward to continuing at this rhythm with this register the day after tomorrow. Because I'm not going to be with you tomorrow because I teach my courses, but I will be with you the day after tomorrow, Rashmi. Thank you, Priyanshu. Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Meena. Thank you so much. And thank you, participants, for being so engrossed in the lectures. You took the prompts well and very thoughtfully, very intelligently. You all took the prompts. So fantastic. We had a great day today. Thank you, Meena. You have set the tone for the next 4 days. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and have a lovely day tomorrow. Have a lovely day with Gertrude Stein tomorrow.
Thank you.